What happens when a gate agent's routine prejudice meets a mother's limitless power? For Dr. Airline Williams, a world-renowned bioscientist, a first-class ticket wasn't a luxury. It was a necessity for her and her young son. But for gate agent Caroline Finch, the color of Airline's skin was the only boarding pass she saw. The public humiliation that followed was just the beginning of a storm. What Caroline couldn't possibly know was that her decision wouldn't just result in a formal complaint. In less than 24 hours, she wouldn't be facing a customer service manager. She would be facing her new boss. This isn't just a story of revenge. It's the story of a revolution at 30,000 feet. The sterile, chaotic symphony of John F. Kennedy International Airport was a familiar tune to Dr. Airline Williams. The rhythmic beeping of baggage carts, the cacophony of a dozen languages blending into a single hum, the distant roar of a 777 taking flight. It was the soundtrack of her life. As the founder and CEO of Elysian Dynamics, a biotech firm that was single-handedly revolutionizing regenerative medicine, Airline lived a life dictated by flight schedules and international time zones. Today, however, was different. This wasn't a solo trip to secure another round of funding in Zurich or to lecture at Cambridge. Cradled in her left arm was her most precious innovation, her 6-year-old son Leo, who was fast asleep, his small chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. His breathing was the only thing that mattered. They were headed to a specialized pediatric pulmonary conference in San Francisco, where Airline was the keynote speaker. More importantly, a leading specialist, Dr. Ishikawa, would be there, the one man she believed could offer a new path for Leo's severe, often terrifying asthma. Her first-class ticket, purchased months in advance, wasn't an indulgence. It was a strategic necessity. The lie-flat seat would allow Leo to sleep comfortably, minimizing stress on his fragile lungs. The enhanced air filtration system in the premium cabin was a godsend, and the guarantee of attentive service meant she could get him medical assistance quickly if needed. Every detail was planned, every contingency accounted for. She approached the bustling gate for Ascendair Flight 217. The line for first-class boarding was short. At the podium stood a woman whose name tag read Caroline. Caroline Finch had a face that seemed permanently pursed, as if she'd just tasted a lemon. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a bun so tight it seemed to stretch the skin around her eyes, giving her a look of perpetual disapproval. When it was Airline's turn, she smiled warmly, shifting the sleeping Leo slightly in her arms. "Good morning," she said, holding out her phone with their digital boarding passes. Caroline's eyes flicked from Airline's face, down to her stylish but comfortable travel clothes, to the sleeping black child in her arms, and finally to the phone screen. A flicker of something disbelief, suspicion, crossed her face before being smoothed over with a thin professional veneer. "Boarding passes," she stated, her tone flat. Airline held the phone steady. "Right here." Caroline scanned them, her lips tightening further. The scanner beeped affirmatively. But she didn't wave them through. Instead, she looked up, her gaze lingering on Airline. "There seems to be a mistake." Airline's smile faltered. A mistake it should be correct. Seat 2A and 2B, Dr. Airline Williams and Leo Williams. "Yes, that's what it says." Caroline conceded, her voice dripping with insinuation. "But these seats are in our flagship first-class cabin. Are you sure you're at the right gate?" The question was so absurd, so loaded, that Airline was momentarily speechless. She glanced around. A few other passengers in the line were beginning to stare. She felt a familiar hot prickle of indignation on her neck. She kept her voice even professional. "Yes, I'm quite sure. This is Flight 217 to SFO correct, and these are my seats. I have the confirmation email and the receipt if you need to see them." "That won't be necessary," Caroline said, though her tone suggested it very much was. She tapped a few keys on her computer, a small smug smile playing on her lips. Ah, I see the problem. It seems there was a last-minute equipment change. The seating has been reconfigured. I'm afraid these seats are no longer available. Alani knew aircraft systems. An equipment change that specifically eliminated 2 first-class seats without affecting others was virtually unheard of. It was a lie, and a lazy one at that. Reconfigured. Alani pressed her voice, losing its warmth and gaining a steely edge. Could you show me the new seat map, please? I'm sure we can find 2 equivalent seats. The cabin is full, Caroline said dismissively, her eyes already looking past Alani to the next passenger, a white man in a crisp suit. We've rebooked you. You're in 34E and 34F. The back of the plane. Middle seats. For a 6-hour cross-country flight with a child who had a serious respiratory condition. The audacity was breathtaking. Absolutely not, Alani said, her voice now dangerously quiet. Leo stirred in her arms, sensing his mother's tension. I paid for first-class seats for a critical medical reason. Those are my seats. I will not be moved to the back of the plane. Caroline finally met her gaze directly, her blue eyes cold and hard. Mom, the decision has been made. If you don't accept the new seating, we will have to rebook you on a later flight. Now, are you going to board or are you going to hold up the line? The man behind Alani, who had been listening with a growing frown, spoke up. Excuse me, he said to Caroline. I'm in 3A. I heard the whole thing. Just let her have her seat. What's the problem here? Caroline shot him a venomous look. Sir, this is an airline matter. Please stay out of it. She turned her glare back to Alani. It was no longer about procedure. It was a battle of wills poisoned by prejudice. In Caroline's eyes, Alani was someone who didn't belong. Someone who must have gotten these tickets by mistake, by fraud, or by some means that made her unworthy. I am not moving from this desk until you honor the ticket I purchased, Alani stated, her voice resonating with the authority of a CEO used to commanding boardrooms. Get me your supervisor. Now. Caroline's thin smile returned wider, this time sharper. It was the smile of someone who held a tiny sliver of power and intended to wield it like a cudgel. I am the lead gate supervisor, she lied. And I'm telling you those seats are occupied. Security. She called out, her voice suddenly much louder, designed to cause a scene. 2 Port Authority officers who had been standing nearby began to walk over. Leo, now fully awake, felt his mother's body tense and heard the sharp edge in the woman's voice. His eyes widened with fear, and he buried his face in Alani's shoulder. His breathing began to hitch. Humiliation washed over Alani, hot and suffocating. She was a titan of industry, a respected scientist, a woman who had shattered every glass ceiling placed above her. But in this moment, at the hands of this one woman, she was being reduced to a stereotype, a problem to be removed. She saw the pity, the suspicion, and the morbid curiosity in the eyes of the other passengers. The officers arrived. Is there a problem here, ma'am? One asked, his hand resting casually on his belt. This woman is refusing to accept her assigned seat and is disrupting the boarding process. Caroline said, her voice a mask of professional concern. That's a lie, Alani said, her voice trembling with a rage she was struggling to contain. She is refusing to honor my first-class ticket and is trying to move my sick child to a middle seat in economy. Leo let out a small, wheezing cough. It was the sound that cut through Alani's fury and replaced it with ice-cold clarity. The game was over. Arguing was pointless. Winning this battle meant losing the war for her son's health. The stress was a trigger for his asthma. She had to de-escalate for him. She took a deep breath, adjusted Leo in her arms, and looked at Caroline Finch one last time. She memorized the name on the tag, the smug certainty in her eyes. There was no hatred in Alani's gaze, not anymore. There was something far more terrifying calculation. "Fine," Alani said, her voice devoid of all emotion. "We'll take the later flight." She turned without another word and walked away from the gate, from the stairs, from the flight that was meant to be a lifeline for her son. As she walked, she gently rubbed Leo's back, whispering soothing words to him. But inside her mind, a different set of words were forming a command, taking shape. She reached the quiet seclusion of an empty gate, pulled out her phone, and dialed a number she knew by heart. It rang once. "Jamal," she said, her voice as calm and sharp as a shard of glass. "It's me. I need you to cancel my morning and clear my schedule for the rest of the week." "Everything okay, Alani?" came the concerned voice of her COO, Jamal Carter. "What happened with the flight?" Alani looked out the terminal window at Ascendair Flight 217 as it began to push back from the gate. She saw the logo on the tail fin, a stylized A, reaching for the sky. "Change of plans," she said, her voice a low, dangerous hum. "I have a new project. I want you to call the team at Goldman Sachs. Get our lead M&A guys on the line. I want to know everything there is to know about a company called Ascendair. Their financials, their debt load, their major shareholders, their vulnerabilities." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Alani, what are you saying? You want to invest?" Alani watched the plane taxi toward the runway, carrying away her son's chance to see the doctor. A profound, chilling resolve settled over her. "No, Jamal," she said. "I don't want to invest. I want to buy it. Buy the whole damn thing." The first 24 hours were a blur of controlled chaos, orchestrated from the sterile luxury of the TWA hotel at JFK. While Leo, finally calm after a dose of his nebulizer and the distraction of an unlimited cartoon buffet on the hotel room TV, slept soundly in a king-sized bed, Alani assembled her war room. Her laptop was open, a secure video conference, connecting her to a dozen of the sharpest minds in corporate finance and law. On the other side of the screen, Jamal Carter, her COO, and the unflappable yin to her visionary yang, quarterbacked the operation from Elysian Dynamics, Manhattan headquarters. "Okay, people, let's have it," Alani said, her voice crisp. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, but for her team, the night had never ended. "What do we know about Ascendair?" A man named David Chen, a senior partner from Goldman Sachs with a reputation for surgically dismantling corporate defenses, spoke first. "Dr. Williams on the surface. They're a middle-of-the-pack legacy carrier. They've been struggling post-pandemic, more so than their competitors. Their stock ticker ASC closed yesterday at 14 sols after 32 a share. Market cap is roughly 2.8 billion. They're big, but they're not untouchable." "Vulnerabilities?" Alani asked, her eyes scanning the preliminary report that had just appeared in her inbox. "Plenty," replied a corporate lawyer named Maria Flores. "They're heavily leveraged. They took on massive debt to upgrade their fleet to 787s right before the 2020 downturn, and those notes are coming due. Their pension fund is underfunded, a major point of contention with their pilot and flight attendant unions. And most importantly, their ownership is diffuse. No single entity owns more than 8%. Most of it is held by institutional investors like Vanguard and BlackRock, who are legally obligated to entertain any offer that maximizes shareholder value." Jamal chimed in his face, a grim mask of determination on the screen. "Their CAO is a man named Mark Thompson. He's old guard, been with the airline for 30 years. He started in baggage handling and climbed the ladder. He's arrogant, resistant to change, and by all accounts has the board in his pocket. He won't see this coming. He'll see it as a joke, Alani countered. A publicity stunt by some tech billionaire with a grudge. We need to make sure that by the time he stops laughing, it's already too late. The plan they formulated was audacious, a corporate blitzkrieg. It would be a hostile takeover executed with blinding speed and overwhelming financial force. Phase 1 was acquisition. Using a series of shell corporations to avoid tipping their hand, they would begin aggressively buying up Ascendair stock on the open market the second the bell rang at 9:30 a.m. We need to get to 5% without anyone noticing, David Chen explained. Once we cross that threshold, SEC regulations require us to file a 13D disclosing our stake and our intentions. That's when the world finds out. From that moment, it's a public war. What kind of premium are we talking? Alani asked. To get the institutional shareholders to flip and override the board, you'll need to offer a significant premium over the current share price. I'd recommend starting the tender offer at $22 per share. That's a 53% premium. It'll cost you, but it's an offer they can't ignore. It signals we're not just serious, we're inevitable. The total cost would be north of $4.3 billion. To Alani, it was a rounding error from her company's last quarterly profits. The money was meaningless. The principle was everything. Do it, she said without hesitation. Jamal, liquidate the necessary assets from my personal portfolio. Maria, have the lawyers draft the tender offer and the SEC filings. I want them ready to go the second we cross the 5% threshold. David, your team's job is to buy smart and buy fast. I want maximum impact, minimum footprint. The orders were given. The machine was in motion. While her team of financial assassins sharpened their knives, Alani turned her attention to the second front of the war information. She needed to know the name of the woman who had lit the fuse. A few discreet calls were made by her head of security, a former Mossad agent named Ben, to contacts within the airport. It took less than an hour. Caroline Finch, Ben reported back over a secure line. Lead gate agent, been with Ascendair for 12 years, applied to their pilot training program 3 times, washed out each time. Multiple passenger complaints filed against her over the years, mostly for rudeness and inflexibility. 3 of those complaints specifically mention racial bias. All of them were dismissed by HR with a written warning. A picture began to form in Alani's mind. A woman trapped in a life she despised, resentful of the pilots she worked alongside, and the successful people she processed day in and day out. A woman whose small authority was her only source of power, which she wielded against those she felt didn't deserve their success, especially a successful black woman. Keep digging, Alani ordered. I want to know everything. Where she lives, where she banks, what she owes. Everything. It felt invasive, predatory even, but Alani had learned long ago that in a war, you don't leave weapons on the table. Later that afternoon, with the market closed and her team executing their initial strategy, Alani finally allowed herself a moment of quiet. She had rebooked a private jet and rescheduled her meeting with Dr. Ishikawa, who had graciously agreed to a video consultation, followed by an in-person meeting the next week. Leo was safe. The immediate crisis was over. Now only the mission remained. She stood by the hotel window watching the planes take off and land in an endless, graceful ballet. She had built her empire on logic data and the relentless pursuit of scientific truth. What she was doing now felt different. It was primal. It wasn't just about punishing one woman or one company. It was about rectifying a cosmic error. It was about demonstrating in the most visceral and undeniable way possible that the old rules were finished. A memory surfaced unbidden. She was a little girl no older than Leo, holding her father's hand. He was a brilliant engineer, but in the 1980s, his skin color was a permanent ceiling on his ambitions. She remembered the quiet dignity with which he absorbed countless slights, the way he would come home, his shoulders slumped after being passed over for a promotion he deserved. He had taught her to work twice as hard to be twice as good, to never give them an excuse. She had followed his advice. She had become so successful, so powerful, that she had thought herself insulated from the petty bigotry that had wounded her father. The incident at the gate was a brutal reminder that for some people all her degrees, her patents, and her billions would ever be was a costume. They would only ever see the color of her skin. Her father had endured. He had swallowed his pride and provided for his family. Alani, however, lived in a different world, a world she herself had helped to build. In her world, you didn't endure insults. You bought the company and rewrote the insult out of the corporate code. A notification popped up on her phone. It was a secure message from Jamal. Phase 1 complete. We have our foothold. The market closes in 10 minutes. Tomorrow morning when we file the 13 AD, the world will know. Welcome to the fight, boss. Alani looked down at her sleeping son, his face a perfect picture of innocence. She smoothed his hair, her touch gentle. This isn't for me, baby, she whispered to the sleeping child. This is for you, so you never have to stand in a line and have someone make you feel like you're not worthy of the seat you paid for. A cold smile touched her lips as she looked back out at the endless river of aircraft. Mark Thompson of Ascendair was about to have a very, very bad day, and Carolyn Finch, the lead gate agent with a chip on her shoulder, was about to become a footnote in the story of the company she thought she served. Monday morning, in the Ascendair corporate headquarters in Fort Worth, Texas, started like any other. CEO Mark Thompson, a man whose silver hair and tailored suits couldn't quite hide a paunch earned from decades of steak dinners and corporate complacency, was sipping his second coffee and barking at an underling about quarterly fuel hedging strategies. To him, the world was a predictable spreadsheet of profits, losses, and acceptable margins of customer dissatisfaction. At 9:01 a.m. Eastern Time, a tremor hit his world. It wasn't a physical one, but a digital one that arrived in the form of an SEC filing notification, pinging the inbox of every financial journalist and Wall Street analyst in the country. A Schedule 13D. His general counsel, a perpetually nervous man named George, burst into his office, his face the color of ash. He was holding a tablet, his hand trembling slightly. "Mark, you need to see this." Thompson waved him off. "I'm busy, George. Whatever it is, handle it." "You can't handle this," George insisted, his voice squeaking. "A holding company called North Star Acquisitions just filed a 13D. Over the past few days, they've acquired 7.2% of our outstanding stock." Thompson stopped mid-sip. Acquiring over 5% of a publicly traded company was a significant move. Doing it quietly and then announcing it was a declaration of intent. "Who the hell is North Star Acquisitions?" "That's the point," George said, scrolling frantically. "It's a shell, but the filing lists the sole director, the beneficial owner." He looked up from the tablet, his eyes wide with disbelief. "It's a Dr. Alani Williams." The name meant nothing to Thompson. A doctor? Is this a joke? Some activist investor trying to make a statement about our carbon footprint? "No, Mark, not that kind of doctor," George said, finally finding the profile he was looking for and turning the tablet around. On the screen was a photo of a poised, elegant black woman. The headline below it read, "Dr. Alani Williams, CEO of Elysian Dynamics, becomes youngest self-made female billionaire in biotech history." Thompson stared at the face. The gears in his mind, rusted from years of inaction, began to grind slowly. Elysian Dynamics. They're the ones working on that crazy gene-editing tech, right? They're worth a fortune. What in God's name does a biotech mogul want with a mid-tier airline? The filing answered his question. Appended to the document was a formal public letter addressed to the board of directors of Ascend Air. North Star Acquisitions, on behalf of Dr. Williams, was initiating an all-cash tender offer to purchase all outstanding shares of Ascend Air at a price of $20 per share. It was a hostile takeover bid. Thompson's laughter was loud and dismissive, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. This is a publicity stunt, a vanity project. She probably had a bad flight, and now she's throwing a tantrum. The board will never approve this. We'll issue a press release, tell her thanks. But no thanks, and that will be the end of it. But it wasn't the end. It was the first shot in a war he was completely unprepared to fight. The moment the news broke on Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal, Ascend Air's stock price didn't just rise, it exploded. It gapped up on the opening bell, soaring past $15, then $18, then $20, quickly approaching Alani's offer price. Wall Street could smell blood in the water, and the scent was irresistible. Meanwhile, back at JFK Caroline, Finch was starting her shift. She had heard nothing of the corporate drama unfolding. Her world was one of boarding zones and baggage fees. She felt a grim satisfaction about the previous day's incident. She had put that woman in her place, asserted her authority. The complaint she assumed would be filed would go into the same circular file as the others. She had followed the procedure, or at least a version of it she could defend. Her colleague, a younger agent named Maria, rushed over to her podium. "Caroline, did you see the news? Our stock is going crazy." "Good," Caroline grunted, straightening a stack of boarding passes. "Maybe Thompson will finally give us a decent raise." "No, you don't understand," Maria said, her phone thrust forward. "Someone is trying to buy the whole company, a hostile takeover. Some tech billionaire." Caroline glanced at the screen, her eyes scanning the article. She saw the stock ticker, the financial jargon, and then she saw the name. Dr. Alani Williams, and beneath it, the same photo Thompson had seen. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The blood drained from Caroline's face. It couldn't be. It was an impossible coincidence. A different woman with the same name. It had to be. But deep in her gut, a cold, heavy dread began to settle. She remembered the look in Alani's eyes as she walked away from the gate. It wasn't anger or defeat. It was the placid focus of a predator that had just selected its prey. The story was spreading like wildfire, not just in the financial world, but on social media. The narrative was too perfect, too compelling. Tech mogul to buy, Airline. After humiliating travel experience, it was a modern-day fairy tale of corporate revenge. But at this point, it was still just speculation. There was no direct link, no confirmation from Alani's camp that the takeover bid was motivated by a specific incident. That changed when a man named Robert Henderson, an investment banker from Chicago, posted a lengthy thread on Twitter. "I was there," he wrote. "I was in the first-class line for Ascend Air Flight 217. I saw the whole thing. I saw a gate agent named Caroline deliberately and maliciously deny a black woman and her sick child the seats they had paid for. The woman, Dr. Williams, handled it with more grace than I could have imagined. This isn't just a corporate takeover. This is justice." He had a picture, a discreetly taken photo from his phone showing Alani at the podium, Leo asleep in her arms, with Caroline's face twisted in a condescending sneer clearly visible. The tweet went nuclear. Within an hour, it had 100,000 retweets. Justice for Dr. Williams and Boycott Ascend Air were trending worldwide. The dam of speculation broke, and a flood of public outrage poured forth. Every news outlet in the country was now running the story, complete with Henderson's photo and Caroline Finch's name. Mark Thompson, who had been arrogantly drafting a press release about fiduciary responsibility, was suddenly facing a brand in absolute freefall. The phones in the Ascendair PR department were ringing off the hook. Celebrities were tweeting their support for Alani, sharing their own horror stories about the airline. Corporate accounts worth millions were publicly announcing they were cancelling their contracts with Ascendair. Thompson stared at the picture of his gate agent, a low-level employee who had just cost his company billions in market value and incinerated its public image. His denial curdled into pure, unadulterated panic. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a perfectly executed corporate assassination, and the bullet was a social media firestorm he had no idea how to fight. He slammed his fist on his mahogany desk. "Get me our crisis PR team, get me our bankers, and somebody find that damn gate agent and fire her right now." But it was already too late. Firing Caroline Finch now would be an admission of guilt. Keeping her would be corporate suicide. He was trapped. Alani hadn't just made an offer for his company. She had seized control of the narrative, turning public opinion into a weapon of mass destruction. In her hotel room, Alani watched the chaos unfold on a dozen different news channels. There was no joy on her face, only a grim sense of purpose. This was the messy, brutal process of creative destruction. She was tearing down the old structure with its rotten foundations of prejudice and incompetence to build something new, something better on the ashes. Jamal's face appeared on her screen. "The board is in panic. The institutional investors are calling us. They want to talk. They see the writing on the wall. Thompson's reign is over. They just don't know it yet." "Good," Alani said, her eyes fixed on the image of Caroline Finch's face, now plastered across every screen in the world. "Let them panic. The real work is about to begin." The next 48 hours were a masterclass in corporate warfare. While Mark Thompson and the Ascendair board scrambled to mount a defense, Alani's team systematically dismantled it. The battle was fought on two fronts: the cold, calculating world of finance and the hot, emotional arena of public opinion. Alani proved to be a grandmaster in both. On the financial front, her offer of $22 a share was proving to be devastatingly effective. Thompson's investment bankers, frantically trying to find a white knight, a friendly company to make a competing higher offer, were coming up empty. No other airline wanted to touch Ascendair, which was now radioactive. Its brand was toxic, its internal culture exposed as discriminatory, and its leadership team looked like a gang of inept fools. Any potential acquirer would be buying a public relations nightmare. Alani's team, meanwhile, was not idle. Jamal Carter and the Goldman Sachs bankers were on the phone day and night with the portfolio managers at Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, and the other faceless institutions that held the real power. The argument they made was simple and brutal. "You have a fiduciary duty to your investors," Jamal would say, his voice a calm wave of logic washing over their panic. "Dr. Williams is offering you a 53% premium on a failing stock. Mark Thompson is offering you brand collapse and a prolonged, ugly proxy fight that will only drive the value down further. One option is a guaranteed, substantial profit. The other is a guaranteed loss. The choice is yours. But remember, if you side with Thompson and the stock creators, your investors will have grounds for a lawsuit. You will not win." It was checkmate. The fund managers, who cared about nothing but the bottom line, saw the inevitable. They began quietly pledging their shares to Alani, promising to vote in favor of the acquisition at the emergency shareholder meeting. On the public front, the situation was even more dire for Ascendair. The story had taken on a life of its own. Talk shows dissected it. Legal experts debated the nuances. Celebrities like Oprah Winfrey and LeBron James tweeted their support for Dr. Williams, turning her into a folk hero. People began posting videos of their own negative experiences with Ascendair, all using the hashtag #WashAscendNoMore. The airline's social media accounts were a raging tire fire of angry customers and mocking memes. Alani, who had remained silent since the bid was announced, decided it was time to speak. She didn't grant an interview to a major network. Instead, she sat down in her hotel room, set up her own laptop, and went live on social media. There were no handlers, no scripts, no teleprompters. It was just her speaking directly to the world. "My name is Dr. Alani Williams." She began, her voice calm and measured. Leo was playing quietly in the background, a deliberate and powerful visual. "A few days ago, my son and I were the subjects of an unfortunate incident at a New York airport. An incident that I have since learned is not uncommon. Many of you have shared your own stories of being made to feel unwelcome, unseen, or unworthy. My story is not unique. The only thing that is unique about my situation is that I have the resources to do something about it on a scale that most cannot." She paused, her gaze direct and unwavering. "This takeover is not about revenge. Revenge is an emotional, fleeting thing. This is about resolution. It's about taking a system that is clearly broken, a culture that allows bias to flourish and mediocrity to hide, and rebuilding it from the ground up. Ascendair has good people. It has pilots, flight attendants, and mechanics who work hard every day. But they are being failed by a leadership that has lost its way. My offer is not just to buy shares. It is an investment in a new beginning. A future where every single passenger, regardless of their race, their religion, or how they are dressed, is treated with dignity. A future where the name Ascendair is a synonym for excellence, innovation, and respect. I am not just acquiring an airline. I am asking for the chance to build the airline of the future. Thank you." The broadcast lasted less than 3 minutes. It was viewed by 50 million people in the first hour. It was a strategic masterstroke, reframing her from a vengeful billionaire into a visionary leader. She wasn't tearing something down. She was promising to build something better. For Mark Thompson, watching the broadcast from his office, it was the final nail in his corporate coffin. He had been outmaneuvered, outclassed, and utterly humiliated. The board members who had previously been his loyal allies were now distancing themselves from him, their phone calls suddenly going unanswered. The institutional investors had formally notified him that they would be voting their shares in favor of the acquisition. The siege was over. It was time to surrender. George, his general counsel, entered the office without knocking. He looked defeated. "The board has convened, Mark. They've accepted the offer. They've also voted for your immediate termination." Thompson felt a strange sense of weightlessness. 30 years he had given this company, and it was all gone in less than a week because of one gate agent and one passenger. He didn't feel anger anymore, just a vast, hollow emptiness. "And the gate agent?" he asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Finch. What happened to her?" "Placed on indefinite unpaid leave," George said. "We can't fire her legally without a full investigation, which would be a PR disaster." "So she's in limbo. A ghost on the payroll." Thompson nodded slowly, staring out the window at the fleet of Ascendair planes parked at their gates. They weren't his anymore. He was just a man in a suit, sitting in an office that would belong to someone else by morning. The Titan of Ascendair had fallen. The day the acquisition was finalized, A crisp autumn morning, Dr. Alani Williams walked into the Ascendair headquarters in Fort Worth, not as a protester or a passenger, but as its sole owner and new chairman of the board. She had replaced the board with her own team of trusted executives from Elysian Dynamics and other industries, led by Jamal Carter, whom she named acting CEO of the airline. The atmosphere in the building was thick with tension and fear. Employees whispered in cubicles and hallways, wondering if their jobs were safe, if this new tech billionaire would gut the company and sell it for parts. Alani's first act was to call an all-hands meeting in the cavernous main atrium. She stood before hundreds of employees, from senior executives to administrative assistants, her presence commanding the space. "Good morning," she began, her voice amplified by a microphone, but retaining its personal warmth. "I know there is a lot of uncertainty in this room today. So let me be clear. I did not buy this airline to destroy it. I bought it to build it. I see the potential for greatness here, a potential that has been stifled for far too long." She laid out her vision, a massive investment in technology to streamline operations, a complete overhaul of customer service training, new, more comfortable planes, better pay and benefits for all employees, and a new corporate culture founded on a single, non-negotiable principle: respect. "Our old slogan was 'reaching higher,'" she said, a slide displaying the tired old logo behind her. "Our new slogan is 'everyone welcome.' It's not just a tagline. It will be our promise, and we will keep it." A wave of palpable relief and then cautious optimism washed through the crowd. She wasn't a corporate raider. She was a leader. After the meeting, Alani retired to what was once Mark Thompson's office. It was a monument to corporate ego, with dark wood paneling a desk the size of a small car and a commanding view of the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. She had most of the furniture removed. She wanted light space and collaboration, not intimidation. There was one final piece of business to attend to, a loose end that had been bothering her since this all began. She turned to her new head of human resources, a sharp, empathetic woman named Sarah Chen, whom she'd brought over from Elysian. "Sarah, I'd like you to arrange a meeting for me. Tomorrow morning, here in this office." "Of course, Dr. Williams. With whom?" "Caroline Finch." Alani said, her voice even. "Fly her down from New York, first class." Sarah's eyes widened slightly, but she simply nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I'll arrange it immediately." The news of the summons terrified Caroline. For weeks she had been in a state of suspended animation. Placed on leave, she was a pariah in her own life. Her neighbors stared. Her few friends stopped calling. She was the infamous gate agent Karen, from the news, a villain in a global drama. Her bank account was dwindling, and her prospects of ever working in the airline industry again were zero. Now the woman she had wronged, the woman who had bought the entire company in response, wanted to see her. She expected to be fired, of course, humiliated, perhaps even sued personally. The flight to Texas was the longest 6 hours of her life. The irony of being served champagne and warm nuts in a spacious first-class seat was not lost on her. It felt like a mockery, a cruel joke before the execution. She was escorted to the top floor, her heart pounding in her ears. The secretary, a kind-faced woman, offered her a water, which she accepted with a trembling hand. "Dr. Williams will see you now," the secretary said. Caroline walked into the bright, airy office. Dr. Alani Williams was not sitting behind the massive desk. She was standing by the large window looking out at the planes. She was dressed in simple, elegant black trousers and a silk blouse. She turned as Caroline entered, her expression unreadable. "Miss Finch, thank you for coming," Alani said. Her voice was not angry, not triumphant, just calm. "Dr. Williams." Caroline managed to say her own voice, barely a whisper. She felt small, insignificant. This woman held her entire future in the palm of her hand. "Please have a seat," Alani said, gesturing to one of two simple chairs placed in the middle of the room. There was no desk between them, no barrier. It was a conversation, not an interrogation. Caroline sat. Alani sat opposite her. For a long moment, there was only silence. Caroline couldn't bear it. I am so sorry." She stammered the words, feeling pathetic and hollow. "What I did, it was wrong. There's no excuse. I was having a bad day. I was stressed, but that's not... I'm so sorry." Alani simply listened, her dark eyes searching Caroline's face. "I've read your file, Caroline," she said finally. "All of it. Not just the complaints. Your original application, your performance reviews, your 3 attempts to enter the pilot training program." Caroline flinched as if struck. The pilot program was her deepest, most bitter failure. The dream she had clung to that had turned to dust. "You wanted to fly," Alani stated not as a question, but as a fact. "You love planes. You love the idea of travel, of connecting the world. But you couldn't pass the final simulator tests, the spatial reasoning and multitasking under pressure. It wasn't there. So you were grounded, stuck at the gate, watching other people live the life you dreamed of." Tears began to well in Caroline's eyes. To have her most private shame laid bare so clinically was devastating. "You became bitter," Alani continued, her voice still without malice. It was the detached analytical tone of a scientist diagnosing a disease. "You saw people heading to exotic places, sitting in the premium seats you felt you deserved, and you grew to resent them. And your resentment found an easy target in people who didn't look like you. You made an assumption about me, about my son. You assumed we didn't belong. You used the tiny bit of power you had to enforce that assumption." Caroline began to sob, her carefully constructed defenses crumbling into dust. "Yes," she whispered through her tears. "It's true, all of it." "I could fire you," Alani said, "and no one would blame me. I could blacklist you from this industry forever. I could even sue you for the distress you caused my child. But I'm not going to do any of those things." Caroline looked up, her face a mask of confusion and disbelief. "Firing you is easy," Alani said, leaning forward slightly. "It solves nothing. You just go on being the same resentful person working somewhere else. That's not a solution. It's a deferment. I told my new company that we would be about building things, not breaking them. And that, believe it or not, includes you." Alani stood up and walked over to the desk. She picked up a folder. "I am creating a new department at this airline, the Department of Passenger Experience and Inclusivity. Its sole purpose will be to retrain every single customer-facing employee from the ticket counter to the cockpit. It will be run by one of the top DEI executives in the country." She walked back and handed the folder to Caroline. "This is a job offer. Your new position, training coordinator entry level." Caroline stared at the papers, dumbfounded. "Training coordinator." "Yes." Alani confirmed. "You will be part of the team responsible for designing and implementing our new Everyone Welcome protocol. You will travel to every hub this airline operates in. You will stand in front of new hires and veterans alike, and you will tell them your story. You will tell them what you did, why you did it, and what the consequences were. Your experience, your failure, will be the cornerstone of our new training program. You will be the living example of what we are not." The offer was both a punishment and a path to redemption, intertwined so completely they were indistinguishable. It was a life sentence of confronting her own prejudice every single day. She wouldn't be allowed to forget. she would be forced to use her own ugly story to create something good. It was a form of karma, so precise and so profound, it took Caroline's breath away. "Your first assignment," Alani said, her voice turning sharp for the first time, "will be to help design the curriculum with your new boss. Her name is Dr. Evelyn Reed. She'll be starting on Monday. You'll report directly to her." Alani let that sink in. Then she delivered the final devastating twist. "Oh, and one more thing, Caroline. My team did a thorough review of Ascendair's assets and liabilities during the acquisition. You may not know this, but the flight school you attended, the one you still owe $87,000 in student loans to, was a wholly owned subsidiary of Ascendair's parent company. Which means I now own your debt." The last bit of air left Caroline's lungs. She was completely, utterly owned. "You will work here," Alani said, her voice now a blade of steel. "You will do your job well. You will help me fix the culture you were a part of. And for every year that you do, I will forgive a portion of your debt. You will earn your way out of the hole you dug for yourself. You will, for the first time in a long time, truly ascend." "Do you accept the position?" Caroline Finch, the pawn in a game she never knew she was playing, looked at the queen who had captured not just the board, but the entire world. Through her tears, she could only nod. "Yes," she choked out. "Yes, I do." The transformation of Ascendair began with a promise. Standing before hundreds of anxious employees in the company's main atrium, Dr. Alani Williams laid out a vision that was as radical as her takeover. "I did not buy this airline to destroy it," she announced, her voice resonating with calm authority. "I bought it to build it. Our old slogan was reaching higher. Our new one is everyone welcome. It is not a tagline. It is a non-negotiable promise." This promise was first tested with Caroline Finch. Summoned from her exile in New York to the new CEO's office, Caroline expected termination. Instead, Alani offered a far more profound form of karma. She wasn't fired. She was repurposed. Caroline was offered an entry-level position in the newly created Department of Passenger Experience and Inclusivity. Her job was to become the living embodiment of the airline's past failures. She was forced to analyze thousands of complaints, just like the one she had caused, and to stand before new hires and tell her own humiliating story of how her prejudice led to the downfall of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. It was a crucible of shame designed not merely to punish, but to forge a new person from the ashes of the old. Painfully slowly it worked. The bitterness in Caroline was replaced by a hard-won empathy, her role as a cautionary tale giving her a purpose she'd never found before. While Caroline confronted her demons, Alani rebuilt the airline's soul. The changes were sweeping and decisive. She invested billions in new aircraft and retrofitted old ones, prioritizing passenger comfort over cramming in extra seats. High-speed Wi-Fi became free employee pay, and benefits were raised to the top of the industry. And a new ethos of empowerment was instilled in the staff. The message was clear: a happy crew creates happy passengers. The world took notice. Within 2 years, the once maligned Ascendair was the industry's gold standard, winning awards for service reliability and as a top employer. Its stock, relisted under the ticker EVLV for Evolve, soared. During this time, Alani's greatest victory took place away from the boardroom. With funding from her new enterprise, her son Leo received cutting-edge asthma treatment, and his laughter became as free and unburdened as the clear skies her planes now flew. To see her work firsthand, Alani took Leo on a commercial Ascendair flight from JFK, the very airport where the revolution had begun. She booked economy seats and watched. At their gate, she saw a young agent handle a distressed, non-English-speaking couple with extraordinary patience and kindness, using a translation app to calm their fears over a missed connection. It was the culture she had envisioned thriving in her absence. Then Alani saw a familiar figure approaching the gate. It was Caroline Finch, now a regional director for passenger experience. She was no longer the pinched, resentful woman from 2 years ago, but a poised executive who moved with a quiet, compassionate authority. She noticed the couple and knelt to speak with them, her expression one of genuine concern. A few moments later, that couple was given seats on the full flight, their faces alight with tearful gratitude. From across the terminal, Caroline's eyes met Alani's. There was no fear or subservience in her gaze, only a silent, profound acknowledgement. Alani gave a slight nod in return. It was a recognition that the debt was paid, that redemption was possible. As Alani and Leo boarded the plane, the gate agent smiled warmly. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Williams. It's an honor to have you." It was a simple greeting, but it was the sound of a promise fulfilled. Settling into her seat, Alani looked at her healthy, happy son, and then out the window at the sprawling airport. She had faced down prejudice, not with anger, but with architecture, building something new and better upon the foundations of the old. The flight path of karma was long, but it had finally beautifully landed. This was more than just the story of a plane ticket. It was a story about what happens when systemic disrespect collides with personal power. Dr. Alani Williams didn't just get an apology. She redefined an entire industry. She proved that the best response to being told you don't belong is to buy the building and rewrite the welcome sign. Her story is a powerful reminder that we all have the ability to demand better, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us. It shows that true karma isn't just about punishment. It's about reconstruction, redemption, and turning a moment of profound humiliation into a legacy of hope and respect. If this story of ultimate karma and empowerment resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up. It helps our channel reach more people who appreciate stories of justice and inspiration. Don't forget to share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What part of Alani's journey hit you the hardest? Thank you for listening.